People who fought back against bullies, what caused it and how badly did the bully get hurt? I think I was about 10. He'd been bullying me and my sisters for a couple of years. He tried to sneak up on my sister on the bus. He stretched out his hand like he was going to pull her hair or something. I made a fist, swung it backwards and him in the eye. He cried. This might sound weird, but I love when the bullies end up crying. They finally know how it feels. Little League football, I was in 6th, brother in 4th grade, his bully in 5th. He intentionally tried to hurt my brother during practice, so I took off running, jumped in the air, went horizontal and landed my cleats in his chest. He lost his breath for a minute or so. I ran laps for many minutes. Bully no longer bothered little brother. At our elementary school, we had a closed-circuit TV network. The principal would use it to give morning announcements every day. 2 kids would be chosen every week to host the announcements, read a few things, and then turn the broadcast over to the principal. A friend and I were chosen to be the 2 kids one week when I was in the 6th grade. It was actually really fun to do. However, 3 punk kids at the school decided they didn't like me. I can only assume they saw me on the announcements, because I'd never met them before. They'd roam the school in a pack. If they saw me, they'd harass me verbally and physically. And, of course, the teachers would do nothing. One day at lunch, they found me as I sat eating with my friends, who did nothing to help me. They surrounded me and began the harassment. Finally, I turned around and grabbed one of the bullies by the throat with both of my hands. He started punching me in the head, but I didn't let go. Finally, I pushed him away. The 3 bullies wandered off. I thought that'd be the end of it, but, later that week, I got called into the principal's office. The bullies had told him that I'd vandalized a restroom in the school by graffitiing and urinating on the walls. I'd been playing basketball with my friends, so I had an alibi. But it freaked me out that the bullies were trying to find other ways to get to me, now that they knew I'd fight back physically. I had my dad call the principal and read them the riot act, and the trouble stopped after that. However, I still had to stay on alert for those bullies until they all got expelled from school a few years later. I was the target of basically an entire classroom full of bullies in the 5th and 6th grade, and although I never physically fought them, it got dark fast. Basically, this shitty little group of kids who called themselves the Squad made it their personal mission in life to make sure mine was as miserable as possible. Stealing my things, breaking my things, threatening me, even attacking me on multiple occasions, just overall being straight-up scumbags. It got so bad that I had to be moved out of the 5th grade class and into the 6th grade class early, but only to find out this little group had plenty of members in the 6th grade class as well, and they quickly got in on the bullshit. Shortly before Valentine's Day, everyone had to make cards for their classmates, and to my surprise I got more cards than anyone else in the freaking class. However, inside each of these little cards was some form of self-termination, surrounded by hearts and shit. Rather than being upset by this, I laughed so freaking hard. Not only were some of these dumbass stupid enough to actually write their names on the cards, but I could recognize the handwriting of all of those who didn't and gladly wrote their names on it for them, and then handed this big-ass stack of cards to the teacher, who proceeded to call a bunch of safeties in to pull out 90% of the freaking class. I was then told I should probably go home early, so the teacher called my mom and I went to wait in the office for her to pick me up. And what do I hear while waiting in the office but a bunch of these dumbass parents being called and informed that their children were being suspended for a ridiculously long time. I don't remember how long, but it was long. While I was at the office, I decided to get one more lick at these assholes and pulled up an old Insta post the leader of this group made months ago. It was a selfie of her holding a gun, and in the comments were a couple of her friends making dark jokes about school shootings. I showed this to the secretary at the front office, who promptly took my phone to show to the principal, and when I came back after the short Valentine's Day break, that sorry bitch was no longer in our class, along with the majority of the other kids in the classroom. After a while all the other kids came back from their suspension, but Courtney never did. I later learned she got expelled for the gun thing. Oops, not sorry. Too long didn't read. Big group of bullies gave me Valentine cards telling me to off myself, ended up getting 90% of the class suspended, and got to listen to all their suspensions being handed out as I waited in the office to go on my break early. Also got the leader of the group expelled. I saw a guy my age bullying a younger kid, so I got the entire bus to point at him at say, "Bully, bully," over and over. He ended up crying. Problem was, my mom and his mom were friends, so my mom took me over to his house and made me apologize to him, so it wouldn't be awkward between her and his mom. Well, I have a crazy story where I didn't fight back but something else did. This would have been in 1977 or 1978. I had just moved to a small city of about 50,000 people. I was like 12. For some reason I was target, no idea why, by this big kid 2 years older and few grades ahead of me, made my life a living hell for a few weeks. I honestly thought he was going to eventually hurt me badly. He also dragged a few of his friends into it. They were just as bad, but this big kid was the catalyst for sure. School days was hell and I ran for my life at the end of each day. It was getting real bad. My neighbors, a trucking family with 4 boys ranging from 13 to 25, the older ones worked the oil fields in another province but came home on the weekends. The youngest was a complete fucking psychopath. I knew something was up with this kid the first second I laid eyes on him. He was big for his age but lean, rangy with big hands. The spookiest bluish eyes. This kid, I will call Darren, was 13, a year younger than the kids that were bullying me. He went to the same school I did and witnessed these other kids making my life a complete hell a few times after school. I gave Darren a piece of my chicken, KFC, as I was walking into the house after me and my mom had picked some up. I am not even sure why I did it. I didn't know him at all really, but if I was being honest, it was probably because he was just so damn fucking spooky. At any rate, next day like clockwork I'm walking home with my sister from school. She was a year older than I, and these fuckheads show up. Usually, for the passé few weeks anyway, I would have been running home by then, but my sister insisted I walk to the store and like an idiot I did. Well, this bully and his friend started harassing me. One of them punched me in the nose which starts spewing blood immediately. Then to make matters worse, one of them punched my older sister in the face as well. We are both crying at this time. Darren, our neighbor, at this point comes walking up smiling and laughing, like laughing hard. He is pointing at me and my sister, and like laughing like a hyena. The main bully steps back confused and that's when Darren swings an old school lunchbox, one of those adult steel or tin ones, blue with stripes, into his face and then turned and kicked another one as hard as he could right in the nuts, who drops like he is poleaxed. The third one just screams out, Darren, Darren, I'm not with them, and nopes the fuck out. Remember, these kids are older than him. Darren at this point is looking and searching the ground like he dropped his keys, but nope, he finds 2 teeth, puts them in his pocket, then reaches into the kid's mouth looking for more but doesn't find any. He is still cackling as he does this. He then goes on his merry way. I was scared still but ridiculously elated at the same time. This turned the whole franchise around at school. I thought I was going to get retribution from these kids but they were scared shitless after that. I lived beside Darren for 4 years. I think I was his only friend even though I generally kept away from him, but sometimes it was unavoidable and well, he never showed me any ill. I do know he got kicked out of hockey and charged for kicking another kid in the face with his skates on, plus I have other stories about Darren that would raise the hair on your head. The last I heard, he worked in the oil fields like his older brothers but on the side he collected drug debts from other workers on the oil fields for another person. Scariest dude I have ever met, but damn if he didn't solve that one thing for me. I am pretty sure it was that piece of KFC. This is like a movie, man. I want to hear more about Darren. I'll tell a bonus story about Darren. It sounds like bullshit but I will tell it anyways, believe me or not, I do not care. On the right side of our house was where Darren lived. On the left side of us was a property. It was a smaller house, that was called a low-income house, wherein they paid very little for rent. A family of ferals, 10 kids, father had just been let out of prison after 10 years, their mother, both violent drunks, and a very old guy, who we assumed was the grandfather, who had no legs from the hips down. This family was a gong show on their best days, and while they didn't live next door for very long, there were many episodes. Anyway, I digress. The old grandfather would sneak under our fence and steal bones from our dog. How did he get there, you might ask? It was crazy. He would walk on his hands, I kid you not. One day Darren and I are in my backyard sitting there, and we hear rustling from behind the fence and there is old grandpappy trying to get under a gap in the bottom of our fence. Gu gets stuck for a bit halfway through, so Darren casually walks over and starts pissing on him. This is the start of a feud between the left and right families that went on for months. The one that comes to mind is the one kept trying to trip me. I finally called him on his shit and he slapped me, which set me off. I body slammed him and jumped on him. I beat the crap out of him and he had to be carried to the nurse. I got called to the office with my parents and they wanted to suspend me, but every other student that witnessed it stuck up for me and said it was self-defense, and I got off with in-school suspension. The dude avoided me for the rest of our time in school. Same sort of thing happened while I was in school, not to me, but to my best friend. He was always picked on and beaten up, usually by a group of 2 or more boys. About once a week he'd get hit by somebody, every single day he'd get picked on in some way or another. Anyways, one day we went skating at the local hockey rink. I had forgotten my skates that day, so I had to just sit out in the lobby. My friend was never a very strong skater, but he was trying to skate around. 3 boys, 2 twin brothers and their cousin, decided it would be great fun to trip my friend every single time they skated past him. I saw it happening about 4 times and was about to go out there and yell at the 3 boys to leave him alone. But the 4th time they tripped him, my friend got up with this look on his face like, "Alright, that's enough of this shit." So he got up, located the 3 boys, and skated towards them. He picked up as much speed as his limited skating ability would allow him to get, and barreled as hard as he could into the smallest of the 3 boys. And I mean, he fucking hit him. Like National Hockey League players would be proud of the body check my friend laid out that day. The other 2 boys didn't quite know what was going on, but the smallest boy got up and immediately ran off the ice, bawling his eyes out, and ran straight to the principal to snitch on my friend. I stepped back into the lobby as soon as he went to the principal and the following conversation occurred. "SV, sniveling wimp, BF, best friend hit me really hard into the boards and it really hurt." Me: "Why don't you tell the principal why BF hit you into the boards?" SV: "I don't know." Me: "You think maybe it was because you and your cousins tripped him about half a dozen times?" SV: "Speechless." Principal: "Well, sounds like you deserved it, get back out there." Nothing happened, nobody got suspended, and SV never bothered my best friend for the rest of our time in school. The only thing the school did to address it was mandate that helmets must be worn at all times when skating, which was a soft rule up to that point. SV had been wearing a helmet when this happened. Also, just to paint the sniveling wimp in the worst possible light, y'all are probably thinking we were in about grade 2 or 3 based on sniveling wimp going to cry about it to the principal. Nope. Sniveling wimp was in grade 9, his cousins were in grade 9, and my best friend and I were in grade 8. 2002, in high school, freshman year, I had physical education. I was the tall skinny kid, so of course I was targeted regularly. The way the lockers were situated was a top row of lockers and a bottom row of lockers in the locker room. My locker was on the bottom row. A kid near my locker would constantly kick my locker closed. It was a combo locker, so you'd have to input the combo again if it closed all the way to reopen it. It was very annoying. After weeks of it, and telling him to knock it off multiple times, I had had enough. I went into class that day with the mindset that if he does it again then I'll hit him. We dressed for PE and surprisingly nothing. I was tense the whole time because I was expecting something to happen. It wasn't until after class when we were changing back into regular clothes that he did it again. I opened my locker again, grabbed my backpack, and swung it as hard as I could. I hit him on the side of the head with about 3 classes worth of textbooks in my backpack. It caused him to hit the other side of his head into the lockers. It must have hurt like hell because he didn't want any more of that. He landed on the floor and put his hands up in front of his face. I remember being so heated in the moment that I almost started crying. The whole class started yelling, "Fight," which of course caused the teacher to show up. We both ended up in the office. We both were suspended for 3 days. My dad asked me why I did it, so I explained to him the whole situation and he didn't punish me. I thought for sure I was grounded. He said as long as I wasn't the instigator, I was fine. Spent 3 days at home playing Warcraft 3, watching trashy daytime talk shows, and riding my bike around the neighborhood. I had so many kids from school asking me on MSN Messenger what happened. Never had any problems with him once I came back. They did move us apart in the locker room though. First time, panic. He was pinching my upper arm, and it hurt, so I pushed him away. I had no particular plan for this, but his neck hit the corner of a wall cupboard, he seemed to be in some serious pain, and ran off. He never bothered me again, and he wasn't seriously hurt. Second time, there was a kid 5 years or so younger than me who insisted, out of the blue, on trying to trip me, humiliate me, and so on. I was a lot bigger than him. This had gone on for months, and I never responded beyond telling him to stop. And then one day he and I were alone in the locker room. I grabbed him, lifted him off his feet and slammed him into the wall behind him. I told him that unless he stopped his shit immediately, he wasn't going to like what happened next time. He said okay, and never bothered me again. When you use violence, use enough of it. Escalating just a little only invites the same. If a bully actually doesn't understand anything beyond violence and fear, that is where you have to meet them, sadly. Which story was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe.